a research essay just basically on issues of privilege within our American education system right now. As I grudgingly walk into the front lawn of my abused and diminishing school, I'm reminded of how closely it resembles a prison. There's the wired fencing that secures the teachers' vehicles, which are safely locked by code entry only to be sure that students like me don't break in. I look across the street and see my classmates conversing with their fellow gang members, getting ready to rob the shop on the corner, or fight the other gang across the street. As I enter the damaged front doors and walk down the hall, I see the lockers that are dead bolted shut so some fool doesn't hide his weapons or drugs in it. I enter the classroom, only to see the few desks that are already occupied, leaving me once again without a seat. Placed safely on the desk of Miss Scales is her cell phone in case of anything going wrong in our class. What I have just described here is what a student would see walking into their classroom at their crudely labeled at-risk school, a school in El Paso, Texas that Boise State University instructor Caitlin Scales has taught at. As I pull into the parking lot, I cannot help but notice the amount of welcoming staff members standing outside the school waiting for the students to arrive on bus. I walk into the front doors, and again, I am greeted by more staff members. As I am directed to my assigned classroom, I can't help but notice the map of the world in the hallway. The map has tiger paw prints on various countries of where the students are from. As I walk into the colorful room, I am greeted by a classroom of fourth graders who all claim a spot on the map. I automatically see that there are 4 centers, each with an instructor to assist the students with their math lessons for the day. As the day passes, I curiously walk through each hall, noticing numerous amounts of adults continually walking around, conversing with students and aiding them. The more time I spend at this school, the more I realize just how resourceful it is. The case I had just reflected on here was my first day walking into William Howard Taft Elementary here in Boise, and my initial thoughts in Sarah Wright's 4th grade classroom. Taft Elementary is classified as a Title I school, which accounts for the resources I saw when I first began to work there as a tutor. In these 2 school settings I just described, both schools are considered underprivileged compared to the schools in privileged middle-class suburban areas surrounding. Now, although both are underprivileged, it is clear to see that one is much more resourceful than the other, due to the fact that one is at-risk school and the other a Title I school, which in fact is another example of privilege. So why is it that one student's education is more important than another's? Based on research of the inequality in America's public education system, the recurring word is privilege. While education is available to all children, it is not of equal quality. Children in high-risk schools are not treated as those in Title I schools. Children in Title I schools are not treated as those in more privileged schools. We have labeled the children in our education system. We have given them a label of privilege, a label that classifies, segregates, and imbalances our students. It is first important to define what exactly privilege is. Privilege is a special right, advantage, or immunity granted or available to a particular person or group of people. In America, it is known that every child has the right to an education. However, there are levels of privilege in our supposedly equal education system, which in turn creates inequality within. In my interview with Caitlin Scales, she addressed how privilege can be both positive and negative. There's positivity of privilege in nicer areas because those students have resources, no economic burden, their teachers are actually required to have teaching degrees, they have a substantial amount of class materials, and college is an extremely tangible future. However, there is also the uglier side of privilege that is present in at-risk schools. Just by labeling a school as at-risk, we are creating an issue of privilege because it is automatically labeling and lessening someone else's opportunities. Caitlin Scales addresses how in this case, there is less privilege and it can even be taken away or out of reach and reinscribed as underprivileged. In something that is supposed to be equal for all, why are we allowing privilege to undercut our children? These inner city kids are being told from the time in kindergarten, 5 years old, that they aren't good enough to have the same resources that are equipped in schools on the other side of town. Not only are we lessening their opportunities, but it can be seen that they are being lessened as a human being. Professor Jeffrey Gilbert brings up the point that students' schools are not identical because their neighborhoods are not. And I couldn't agree with this more because their communities aren't identical. We have urban versus suburban areas, poor communities versus more affluent communities, and many other differences. But my question is, why should a family's socioeconomic status lessen their child's education? Education is an equal right, but it is not an equal experience. Broken communities should not mean a broken education. A reliable education needs to be something every parent can depend on for their child, no matter the financial state they're in. As stated previously, one of the biggest differences in schools are the availability of resources. Professor Kaplan would describe a privileged place as an area with experienced teachers who have seniority and choose to teach in nice neighborhoods due to better resources such as supporting teachers, better funding, ideal working conditions, and easier to manage students. I would describe this at the top of our education system, where students and teachers feel stable, nourished, and respected. Then we go down a level. But when I say down a level, I am not disrespecting a student's ability. I am generally stating how they are ranked in our public education system today. Taking a look at Taft Elementary, again, a Title I school, we get students who are refugees, living in poverty, and some who are even classified as homeless. These students don't know if they will have food on their plate, have a home next month, or if mom or dad will still have their job. There are numerous amounts of concerns that these children have, but that's just a few. That's not even covering the students who have been abused and neglected. Because these students are in a Title I school, the government has privileged them and given their school money and resources to feel safe. The school pays for the meals of these students, takes measures to give them transportation, and there are social workers and behavioral interventionists on site ready to tackle the need of any student. These students who come from extremely impoverished homes have been aided with an attempt to equalize their educational experience. But why does the help stop once we get to at-risk schools? Why must the resources stop there? In these at-risk schools, there are far more disciplinary problems, the support from administration is lacking, resources are almost completely diminished, and the number of neglected, violent, and abused children exponentially increases. Some schools are created within privilege, other schools are given privilege, and then there are schools that are completely cut off from it. The gap in our education system is astounding. Some may even go as far as Professor Kaplan and claim that schools are more segregated today than before the 1954 United States Supreme Court Brown versus Board of Education decision. Many people will hear this and think that it's not possible because America has desegregated. They will say our government passed laws making segregation of schools illegal, so it doesn't happen. They're right. Our schools are not legally segregated. However, as Caitlin Scales concurs, they are by socioeconomic status. The segregation is now between low-income, low-performing, and at-risk schools versus thriving schools. Just because the school itself is not segregated by historical definition, it is by current definition. I believe the biggest reason Americans do not realize this is because what we believe to be normal. Education advocates Erica Frankenberg and Elizabeth DeBray claim that segregation and inequality are basic parts of the American story and have usually been accepted as normal. But I'm forced to ask, is this not saddening to you? As a student, educator, parent, or citizen, does this not bother you that in our country, we see inequality as normal? Sarah Wright states that maybe there are some things we may never be able to overcome as a country. However, that does not mean that we should not take opportunities in order to equal the playing field. There should always be a fight, an effort, and a demand for inequality to be diminished. Chicago teacher Gregory Mitchie has numerous statements from students in his book based on his experience teaching in the inner city. One statement that stood out to me was from a girl named Perla. Perla stated that no matter from what country, color, or size a person may be, we should have respect for every person, because nothing is going to change the fact that a person is and always will remain a human being. That powerful statement came from a middle school student. We need to consider the pure, unjaded input of young minds. Why, as a country, have we accepted that not all human beings will be treated equally? Why have we accepted that not all of the children in America will get the rightful education they deserve, the education our law promises they will get? I see a glimpse of hope in an example where we can see desegregation happening in a school Caitlin Scales taught in around 2006 in Indianapolis. In order to strive to help the students in downtown Indianapolis, there was a project being done to merge students and give those students living in the inner city access to schooling outside of the city. When I first heard this, I automatically thought about how parents could be unhappy with this shift. Caitlin Scales said it did bring some gang activity into the suburban schools that the population surrounding knew about but had never experienced. This concern brings up the debate of an individual versus the common good. Individually, parents were concerned for their children, completely understandable. However, this was far more important for the collective community as a whole. Kids from the city were now being placed in schools filled with extracurricular activities, resources, and experienced teachers. They no longer had the label at risk or underprivileged because their education had been matched to those around them. If we see this can work on a small scale like Indianapolis, then why don't we try this on a larger scale? As I have scratched the surface of earlier, the situations of the students vary throughout multiple different schools, which in turn puts far more duties on the teachers. In nicer schools, you will have students that are well disciplined, the behavioral offices will be small, and the students in them will be few. These students will also have options after they leave the public education system, like college, military, taking a year off. In Sarah Wright's 4th grade class, there are English language learner students who again are refugees and other students who come from unstable families. With students who are refugees, Sarah Wright has to take into account the culture they come from. For example, if a student from Somalia or Congo is shutting down and avoiding eye contact, they're not being disrespectful because for them, giving a person eye contact is disrespectful. This brings into the issue of Americanization. One of the things I truly respect Sarah Wright for is the care that she has for her students of various different backgrounds. So in situations like these, Sarah explains how she makes sure that the student understands that shutting down at school is inappropriate because they just wasted 10 minutes by doing no work. However, she does not shame their behavior because she understands their culture. She knows why they're doing it. When teaching various different students like this, a teacher must be aware of the student's culture and home life. You have to respect the students and understand what is going on outside of school because what is happening outside of school affects them in school with their attitude, behavior, and performance. This skill as a teacher gets harder when you are teaching students in poverty-based schools because the situations happening outside of school become more plentiful. This gets especially more difficult in at-risk schools. Gregory Mitchie accounts in his book how he felt as if school had taken over his life and it had left him physically, mentally, and emotionally drained. As the situations get more extreme, the teachers need to be better equipped. Unfortunately, that is not always the case, and it's not always the teacher's fault. In preparing educators, Caitlin Scales says how there needs to be a change. She brought up the idea about teaching programs being like doctorate programs, where student teaching is treated more like a 2-year residency. Through this more thorough and experienced training, teachers could become more prepared and better equipped to handle more severe situations and teaching environments. This could also alter the incredibly horrible image people have on teachers in America. It's no secret that teaching is not the most respected profession. If teachers felt nourished, taken care of, trusted, and respected, then that would translate into the classroom, and the classrooms would then become a better environment. If this were to happen, then there would not be as many burnout teachers or potential teachers who are switching careers because of all the blame being thrown in the face of our educators. Maybe I'm seen as just a college student who's a naive 18-year-old that doesn't understand how the real world works. Or maybe I'm a driven 18-year-old who's voicing her opinion on large-scale issues that others who are too comfortable in their own lives are too complacent to bring up. Throughout my experience and research, I have gained an exponential amount of respect for those who teach in underprivileged areas. The work and energy that goes into teaching in an under-resourced classroom is incredible, and these teachers need to be appreciated. Through my appreciation of these educators, I have also grown frustrated. Frustrated in the unequal education system we currently have. My frustration doesn't come from the fact that I myself am going to be an educator. It comes from the fact that I am a living, breathing human being just like you. My hope for myself is that my frustration continues to fuel my fight for equal education in America. My hope for you, as education students, educators, parents, or citizens, is that there is a reaction forming inside of you right now. Whether it's appreciation, sadness, anger, or whatever else you may feel. I hope you feel something, because that something is the start of a movement in your heart. Your participation in this movement can be as small or as big as you please. Education students, get involved in the courses you are taking right now. If your instructor isn't pressing questions like Caitlin Scales has for me, you press the questions on them and force the conversation. Educators, treat each student with the respect of their background. Know your student's story and know where they come from before you generalize them, or worse, label them. Parents, be involved in your child's life. Help and visit the classroom and see if your child is being undercut compared to the surrounding schools. Go to the school board meetings and learn what administrators are saying and what teachers are fighting for, because after all, the teachers are fighting for your child. Citizens, don't think that this doesn't involve you. When it's time to vote, don't just think of the money towards public education as more taxes, and do not blindly vote. Truly research where your money is going to go and if your investment will be used properly. After all, it is an investment into the minds of the future. Education is not something that should have to be fought for. Education is a basic human right that all of our children deserve.